History is about to be made as a woman of many firsts has been unanimously recommended by the Judicial Service Commission to ascend to the position of Chief Justice. 61-year-old Lady Justice Martha Koome is the JSC's pick for the top post in an announcement made this afternoon, sparking a lot of reactions among Kenyans. If appointed, she will make history as the first woman to rise to the rank of Chief Justice in the Republic of Kenya. The announcement of her nomination came barely hours after the Court of Appeal overturned a High Court ruling which had barred the JSC from announcing the CJ contest winner pending determination of a petition. And this was just one of the many petitions in an exercise marred by litigation. Tonight, on the front row, we lead with this big decision by the JSC as we corner all possible angles for you. What next for the judiciary? What would likely be in Koome's entree if she gets the job? What set her apart from the other 9 candidates? How different will she be as a Chief Justice if appointed? We shall be answering all these questions for you with a panel of legal minds, including Professor Tom Ojenda, Senior Counsel and former JSC Commissioner, Kakai Kissinger, who's a former Deputy Chief Registrar of the Judiciary, Charles Kanjama, who will be joining us a bit later on the show, also a lawyer, and Maria Mbeneka, also a lawyer, to just take a look at what turn is this the judiciary is about to take with this major announcement by the Judicial Service Commission. But before we get into all that, I want us to quickly take a look at her credentials and her professional history, perhaps what may have set her apart from the others. Who is Lady Justice Martha Koome? I want us to quickly take a look at that profile for her education, her professional credentials. Well, born in 1960 in Meru County, and some of our academic and professional qualifications: Master of Law from the University of London in 2010, Master of Law from the University of London in 2010, and of course she also has a postgraduate diploma in law from the Kenya School of Law, which she got in 1987, admitted to the role of advocate in 1987, where of course she began her legal career. Judge of the Court of Appeal from 2012 to date, but it should be noted that she was judge of the High Court in 2003, appointed by the then President Mwai Kibaki. She served in the Court of Appeal in Nairobi, Nyeri and Malindi, and also served as a High Court judge between 2003 and 2011. And you're looking at her legal experience: head of London Environment Division of the High Court in Nairobi, some of the courts she's served in, resident judge, High Court in Nakuru, as well as Kitale. She's also served in the High Court in Nairobi, in the Commercial Division and Family Division, as well as managing partner at Martha Koome and Company Advocates between 1993 and 2003, just before she was appointed as judge of the High Court. Legal associate at Madhenge and Mushemi Advocates between 1988 and 1982. A career spanning 33 years. Some of the hallmarks of her career: she's been seen to be a defender of human rights. We're talking about as well children and women have come as a center stage as she has been a defender of their rights. And this also came up during her interview. We'll be seeing that. Runner-up in the 2010 United Nations in Kenya Person of the Year, and she was recognized for her efforts in defending children against the law, as well as she is a mother of 3. And of course, this is just a bit of who Lady Justice Martha Koome is, and we'll be getting into a lot of the details on who she really is, what works has she done that has warranted her or has seen her ascend to be picked for this top job at the judiciary. But before that, just this afternoon, the Judicial Service Commission, led by Chairperson Professor Olive Mugenda, made the announcement that they have unanimously nominated Lady Justice Martha Koome of the Court of Appeal as their candidate for the position of Chief Justice. Let's just take a look at what was said this afternoon.
Has finalized the process of evaluation of the various candidates interviewed for the position of Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya. The JSC has run an open, transparent, and competitive recruitment process that has witnessed the participation of the public and key stakeholders. After lengthy deliberations and careful consideration of the performance of the various candidates, the JSC has unanimously recommended the appointment of Honorable Lady Justice Koome Martha Karabu, Judge of the Court of Appeal, as the Chief Justice of the Republic of Kenya, and has submitted her name to His Excellency the President for appointment. The Commission wishes to thank all the candidates, Kenyans, and all stakeholders for their participation in the recruitment process.
So my colleague Sophia Wanuna will be joining us shortly with an update to just quickly take a look at Lady Justice Martha Koome, the interview that has been. What kind of succession race have we witnessed this past 2 weeks? But before that, I'd mentioned earlier that we'll also be having panelists to help us break down these issues. I'll be hosting Professor Tom Ojenda, who's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with a distinguished law career and vast experience in legal matters spanning over 25 years. He's one of the few Kenyan lawyers who have attained the distinguished professional grade of senior counsel in the legal field. Professor Ojenda is the immediate former representative of the Law Society of Kenya to the Judicial Service Commission. He was also a commissioner in the Truth, Justice and Reconciliation Commission of Kenya. And of course, he will be bringing that experience as a former JSC commissioner to this conversation. We'll also be speaking to Kakai Kissinger, who's a trainer and head of outreach at the BBI National Secretariat. It should also be noted that he's an advocate of the High Court of Kenya with 16 years experience. A former deputy chief registrar of the judiciary, Kakai holds a master's degree in law from Harvard Law School and a postgraduate studies in international trade law from the University of Turin. And also he will be bringing his experience having worked in the judiciary as a deputy chief registrar. Maria Mbeneka will also be joining us. My apologies for that. And she has been in private legal practice for the past 18 years. She's a council member of the Commonwealth Lawyers Association representing East Africa and Seychelles. Maria is a former council member of the Law Society of Kenya, having served as a treasurer and general member representative for the period of 2018 to 2020. Beneka is also the immediate former vice president of the East Africa Law Society, having served from 2016 to 2018. And later on, I will be speaking to Charles Kanjama, who will be joining us by way of Zoom, a managing partner of Muma and Kanjama Advocates, and is the head of dispute resolution practice and support services practice, litigation, ADR, and debt collection. Kanjama is the chairman, Law Society of Kenya, Nairobi branch, and he has 17 years of post-admission experience and 14 years law firm experience, all in various legal competencies and with notable assignments under his name. So that's who we have. Who will be helping us dissect some of these issues. And as we wait for my colleague Sophia Wanuna to join us, maybe let's just get quick reactions from our panelists. Professor Ojenda, I'll start with you. It has been quite a journey in succeeding Maraga, and the past 2 weeks specifically, from the interviews to the kind of petitions we saw. What are your thoughts on who the JSC has finally settled on?
Thank you, Akisa. I would say that after interviewing 10 candidates for Chief Justice, I was a bit surprised that the JSC had been stopped by the court petitions filed by 3 petitioners, being E121 of 2021. But finally, I am glad that the Court of Appeal stayed the judgment or the order of the High Court today morning, leading to the announcement of the nominee for Chief Justice as Martha Koome. Now, I must say I was not surprised by the choice, because I expected any of the 3 judges, either Justice Oko, Fred Ngatia, Senior Counsel, or Justice Koome to be announced as Chief Justice. And I think for those who read the media, if you you read the Citizen newspaper, Monday Citizen newspaper, you saw the top cover. They had indicated that there was a possibility that the JSC was tending towards the Lady Justice Martha Koome as the choice for Chief Justice. But equally interesting is the fact that for the first time, you have a lady Chief Justice, and I think that is a first within this country. That must be commended, I must say. But as I said, today, having seen the tweet from Itumbi, Dennis Itumbi, you know when Itumbi tweets, you always think there's some truth in it. The tweet from Itumbi, of course, when Donald Kifore tweets, you don't believe it, but you could see that when Dennis tweeted, he made the predictions.
Yeah.
And clearly that is what has come to be. But let me say that Justice Koome has a track record.
Which Prof we will get into.
Of many years.
Yes, which we will get into, her track record, yes, and perhaps what set her apart. But Prof there saying that he was not surprised by that pick. He had his top 3 in mind. Mariam Beneka, were you surprised? Was it a natural pick? What say you?
I was completely rooting for her. Mm-hmm. And I was pleasantly surprised, like, you know, when she was picked, because there were other top contenders. Being the top 3, in the top 3, I was really rooting for her, especially because she has been very diligent in her work, and she's someone who aced the interview. If you watched her interview, she did quite well. But a lot of people were banking on either of the other 2 candidates, that is Justice Oko or Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia. So for Lady Justice Martha Koome to be selected and her name to be forwarded to the President for appointment as Chief Justice, that is a real joy to me and other female lawyers, and I think women in Kenya at large.
Quite a big milestone, and we've gotten a lot of reactions from women as well, saying that perhaps it was about time. Kakai Kissinger, what was it like for you? How did you initially react to that decision by the JSC?
Thank you for having me. Thank you for inviting me today. A great day for feminists in Kenya and across the globe and across Easter, that we are actually going to have a first female CJ, female CJ in the Republic of Kenya. This being CJ number 15 order of ranking. For me, it wasn't a surprise, and we have had this discussion before.
Right, we are having challenges with that connection with Kakai Kissinger. We'll be fixing that up. But as I promised, my colleague Sophia Onuna now joins us live from our newsroom. Sophia, thank you for joining us here on the front row. Quite historic that the JSC has picked Martha and a woman for this post.
Indeed, Akisa, earlier this afternoon, the big news coming in from the Judicial Service Commission in that press conference announcing Honorable Justice Martha Koome as the nominee to the position of Chief Justice. Indeed, this placing her on the cusp of history. As you mentioned earlier, we have not had a woman Chief Justice in this country, neither have we had a woman leading any of the arms of government, the executive or, in fact, the legislature, that's Parliament. And so this is a big moment, significant by every account, and not just because it's a woman, but because of definitely what she puts and brings on the table. It is based on all of these issues that she was interviewed, that the interrogation that happened before the JSC, to the extent of being qualified and capable to do this job, happened. And remember, earlier today, it was that Court of Appeal quashing the decision decision of the High Court that had stopped the JSC from proceeding with canvassing the matter of recruiting a CJ, that allowed them then to quickly meet around midday, 1 p.m. earlier today, and within hours they had a decision unanimously, as you said earlier, announcing it to the country. So that would be argued was not a difficult decision to make. This has seen controversial issues leading to litigation as far as that commission and its composition is concerned. But you can see to the extent of who they nominated to sit and to serve the country as Chief Justice was a decision they arrived at quite quickly, announcing it to the country. Akisa
is saying that perhaps this didn't come as a surprise, but did we see this coming?
Yes, there has been that school of thought that this was a surprise for some quarters. And for those for whom perhaps it was a surprise, Akisa, would be those not familiar with whether it's individuals or the workings of the legal fraternity, whether it's serving as advocates or those in the bench. To the larger public, the likes of Senior Counsel Fred Ngatia got a lot of tongues wagging just because he had been seen representing the president in previous presidential election petitions in court. So a higher-ranking senior counsel who has gotten lots of hours on television, been watched before, some thought this could make a good fit. The likes of the Justice Ouko, the president of the Court of Appeal as well, having been an insider, rising to the stage of president of Court of Appeal. Again, that was a name being seen largely and likely to be the candidate just because it was seen as a natural form of progression, then proceeding on to be candidate for Chief Justice. So for Martha Koome, unless you're within the judiciary or have been aware of some of the work she's done, even in terms of human rights advocacy, it was when she sat before this commission for about 6 hours the first week on a Wednesday and was interrogated on the various issues that they were considering, that many then got insights into who really Honorable Justice Martha Koome was. But lastly, on the issue of whether this was in fact a surprise, a debate. Some would argue, unfortunate of a debate, that because the country currently has a woman DCJ, that in fact it would then not make sense to equally have a CJ who's of the same gender. This, of course, not in law, and we have a president and deputy president who are men. So again, there have been those pushing that argument and narrative, saying it's not something that we were likely to see. But here we are, a unanimous decision, quickly arrived at, and in a matter of days or weeks, we could very well have Madam Chief Justice.
For 2 weeks, Kenyans were treated to a grueling interviewing exercise live on TVs and other platforms. But looking at how Lady Justice Martha Koome was interviewed, because she was second on the table, if I could call it that, what are some of the highlights of her interview that perhaps came out very clearly during that process?
Akisa, we got to hear about Martha Koome, the person. We got to hear about Martha Koome, the daughter, the mother, but also the practitioner in legal fraternity, as I mentioned, as an advocate, as sitting on the bench, human rights, advocating and championing for women's rights, children's rights as well. But one of the things that was widely covered that came up during that interview, because they were put to task, all of the 10 candidates, on their track record and previous rulings, was a judgment and ruling in 2017 following that controversial repeat presidential election. Now, Justice Odunga had found and ruled that the returning officers had illegally been appointed by the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. That this was coming a day to the repeat presidential election. So the president of the Court of Appeal, who's currently the Attorney General, then empaneled a bench quickly that sat on the eve of that election. Martha Koome, Honorable Justice, was one of those judges, and at 8 p.m. they quashed the Odunga decision. So that is what has seen many contests. In fact, Muhuri had sent a petition saying that based on that move alone, she was not fit to serve. But Martha Koome, in her submission before the JSE, was of the view that because of the constitutional implication and crisis that not making that decision would have meant for Kenya, she had no regrets and indeed stood by the decision she made. And of course, she got to also speak a lot about her experience in jurisprudence and her understanding and kind of leadership Kenya would see under her leadership.
So what next? What do we expect to see next?
What do we expect to see next, Akisa? That name has been transmitted from the JSC to the president. The president in this largely is a ceremonial role. So from the president, it will move to Parliament. Upon receipt of this nomination, Parliament has 28 days to then vet the candidate. And as we have seen with today, the JSC had 7 days to announce the nominee, but they took hours, minutes after they were allowed to proceed with the process. So even Parliament, with the time they had, we will see this, of course, canvassed under JLAG in Parliament. That's the maximum period, but they can do it before then, after which they send it back to the president for official appointment, which is through a Gazette notice, after which we will then see the swearing in of Honorable Justice Martha Koome.
All right, Sophia, thank you very much.
And a quick note, Akisa, before I go, is that in the event Parliament does not approve her, then the process would be taken back to the JSC. Just a quick note.
Definitely very important to note. We go right back up. If Parliament rather does not approve Lady Justice Martha Koome for the position of Chief Justice, is something worth looking at. Sophia Anuna there joining us from the newsroom. Thank you for joining us. Let's now get it back to our guests. And Prof, you started talking about Lady Justice Martha Koome's credentials and perhaps what you thought gave her an upper hand. Talk to us about that.
Clearly, Akisa, perhaps the reason why the JSC settled on Martha Koome is because of the advantage that she enjoys as a sitting judge of the Court of Appeal. And as a sitting judge of the Court of Appeal, she will be able to meander through the administrative corners of the judiciary, and perhaps she'll not be joining the judiciary for the first time, and therefore the changes that are at hand are changes that she can easily deal with. Two, and I think we come from an era where the judiciary and the executive have had rough patches. As you know, there's a pending question of the appointment of the 41 judges. The JSC, I'm sure, was looking for a nominee who will be easy with the state or with the executive, and who would at least ensure that a new path of engagement with the executive commences. And I think JSC, keen to embrace that new path, thought that Justice Martha Koome was a candidate to begin this new phase of the association between the judiciary and the executive. That is the second point. The third point that I see as the strength of Martha Koome is that not just passion for children's issues, but because she's been a sitting judge, she has sat on a number of sensitive cases and a number of decisions that have made it, have created some comfort, some kind of chemistry or comfort between her and the other players in the judiciary. In my view, she will be a good administrator and perhaps bring soft skills to the judiciary that would perhaps be different from the era of Judge Maraga that we've just witnessed. But let me mention this, that Chief Justice must always strike a blow for the independence of the judiciary. And we look forward to that phase as well, that the minimum test that a Chief Justice must ensure that they meet is the test for judicial independence and decisional independence of judges. And I believe this can only be judged after Honorable Lady Chief Justice Martha Koome takes office, because you can really never predict when a judge is appointed. But as Sophie Anuna has pointed to the timelines, Once the name is submitted to Parliament within 14 days, I'm sure that Parliament should be able to approve the name and send it back to the President for gazettement of Judge Koome as Chief Justice. Then, after that, the real work starts. But I think also at the interview table, let's give it to the judge. Lady Justice Koome performed relatively well. As I said, the three top judges in the interview, Lady Justice Koome, Judge Ouko, and Fred Ngatia Senior Counsel, all performed well and were equal to the task of leading the judiciary in this country. And we wish her well in our new position.
Mbeneka, what are some of the hallmarks of the 33-year legal journey for Lady Justice Martha Koome that perhaps you imagine she would bring that vast experience to being CJ? What are some of these things that we can nitpick and say this will be right for her when she finally sits on that seat of CJ?
Akisa, I think the Lady Justice has had very, very extensive experience, like you've said, first in the legal profession. She has served as chair of FIDA Kenya, and she has done a very good job in that particular area. We remember her very well as members of FIDA for her leadership when she was there, and the way she steered FIDA at the time. She has also been, as a judge, remember a very landmark case where she decided on the fate of children who have attained the age of 18 years, going on to university, but still found that the parents, because this particular case she decided, and I believe it's still a very big precedent, where she decided that one of the parents, in this instance, the father, who had refused to pay for the education of his daughter, she compelled him to do so and pay for her university fees. And I remember that particular case has been held in high regard because she was able to rope in international treaties. And I suppose during her stint as a judge is one of the reasons she was then the chair of the Committee on Children, and she even went on to receive an award. So she has been bold in her judgments, and she has been, steadily progressive if you look at her career progression from a judge to the Court of Appeal, and she has done quite well. And if anything, she has been consistent. So this translates for the judiciary a steady hand, in my view, but also a progressive CJ, because having the benefits of the experience, both as a lawyer and a High Court judge, then into the Court of Appeal, what she brings on board at the Supreme Court is that kind of steady hand and foresight, if you will, and having perhaps a mixed bag of judges at the Supreme Court, she'll be able to, in my opinion, bring them together and forge quite a united judiciary. And I think she'll be very, very good for the institution as a whole, and even for the country, because of her, her forthrightness and her steady approach.
Something Prof. Ojenda has said that I'd really like you to comment on, that perhaps one other thing that would be different is she might be able to bring some soft skills that have not been there in the past. What are your thoughts?
I think so. Well, she's, above all, she's a judge, and she'll be the Chief Justice. Whether or not she will have the soft skills is something to be seen. But having looked at how she has handled various leadership roles, she has actually been able to do so without compromising the job at hand. So I believe she'll be able to do well. If you look at her involvement in matters even outside of her work as a judge, she's a participant in very progressive thinking, and she's able to articulate issues as they were, in terms of what's happening socially, as well as what's happening within the legal profession. And you just need to look at, some of the speeches she has made when she's dealing with issues that affect the society. So as far as the soft skills are concerned, I think she will just have the approach that is required of a leader of her caliber, which is firm, but forthright, and she'll be able to get things done, in my view, because that's the way she has been.
Great. Kissinger, I wanted to take a short break, but before that, quickly, there was a whole debate on whether the judiciary needs an insider or an outsider to take it to the next level, given the tenure that we saw with Billy Mutunga and then with David Maraga. Justice Koome has worked in the civil society space. She has been a judge. She's had a progressive legal career. Some argue that perhaps they found a balance of someone who has experience on both ends. What are you saying about that?
And I'm sorry for my very bad network today. But I think you notice in Mother Koome is an insider because she's sitting at the Court of Appeal at the moment. But at the same time, she has a history of being an outsider. So she brings in some cocktail of approach and cocktail of experiences coming in as an insider, but at the same time coming out as an outsider. But remember one thing is that by the time the JSC decided to go for Mother Koome for this position, they may have looked at all her past experiences, because we all watched these interviews on television, and even Kenyans went ahead and were courteous enough to be ranking. And just as my two colleagues, Professor Ojenda and Beneke, have said, we all knew that it could either go to Mother Koome, it could either go to Fred Ngata, the senior counsel, or it could go to William Ouko. But then looking at now how JSC has decided, there was some added advantage and importance on why they settled for Mother Koome. So she brings in this outside approach for her previous legal practice, human rights movement, and she also brings in the approach of being an insider, knowing how the institution works, since she was appointed to the judiciary in the early 90s up till now, having worked from the High Court to the Court of Appeal. So I think that was one of the biggest advantages probably she went through compared to the other candidates or any other issues. And the mere fact that it's a woman coming in, a lady rather, coming in as a first CJ in the Republic of Kenya is a plus to women jurists and to Kenyans at large. And this is a very good thing for us to see. But we may not want to judge so much or say so much about Mother Koome because we do not know what she's going to do. We wish her all the best. I personally called her this evening to tell her congratulations for this new appointment because I've worked with her. I know her personally. I think she's a lady of class, and she's a lady who will turn that institution into some positive gains going forward.
Right, we'll continue with this conversation. A lot of good things being said here about Lady Justice Martha Koome. Did you see it coming yourself? And as a Kenyan, are you confident that this would be the right pick to head the judiciary arm of government? Talk to us at Akisa Wandera at KTN News KE. The hashtag to use is the front row. You can as well text us on 22155. We'd also love to hear your thoughts on this. We have been following up these interviews for the past 2 weeks, so it's only fair to hear your thoughts on the same. Let's take a quick break. Stay with us. This is the front row.
This is KTN News.